In Tasmania, it's known simply as the 28th. Just mention the date and everybody knows what you're talking about. The 28th is Port Arthur. The 28th is Martin Bryant. It is the kindest euphemism Tasmanians can find for the horror of the day and the suffering ever since. Growing up in Tasmania, I remember the bushfires in the 1960s and the time our bridge was knocked down. Terrible disasters, both of them, but at least there was a cause, something to understand. But a year on, there remains no meaning and no meaningful explanation for what happened last year on the 28th.
I suppose the most vivid memory of beyond that day is waking up the next morning and not having anyone in the bed with me, and not having any noise in the house, and waking up wishing that whatever had happened the day before, in fact, hadn't. I don't think the pain really eases at all, and people say that time heals. I don't tend to agree with that. I think the hurt's there just as strongly, and the longing to have them back is just as intense.
A year has passed now since the dark events of that autumn Sunday. A year since I went home to report from the heart of my own community on a grief that surely didn't belong here. The world's trouble spots perhaps, but not home, not Tasmania.
Janet Quinn, Andrew Mills, Elizabeth Howard.
Among all the other reporters, and just like them, I held back my tears for later. We sent our reports around the world, and then we went away, hoping to forget. But a year goes round, and that day returns. It may be something in the slant of the autumn light, or a gathering chill in the air, but suddenly we're back, listening to the voices of those whose lives were forever changed on the 28th.
I don't have anything against Martin Bryant. I don't have anything for Martin Bryant. I don't think about him very often. I feel sorry for his family. But it was just the classic cliche, which is we were at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Jo Winter and her husband Jason had just moved to Tasmania from New Zealand. Jason was a winemaker with a promising career. They were at the Broad Arrow Cafe with their 13-month-old son Mitchell when Bryant opened fire.
When the shooting stopped, I just got up and picked Mitchell up and just went over in the direction of where Jason was. And I found him pretty well immediately. And there was nothing I could do to help him. So I just had a chat to him and told him how much I loved him.
I'd only been in the information office by about 5 minutes when the first shots rang out.
Stephen Howard worked at Port Arthur as a tour guide. He helped move people in the car park to safety, then took cover in the bush. After the shooting stopped, he entered the Broad Arrow Cafe where he knew his wife was working that Sunday.
I walked across to the counter and stepped around behind it, and there was Liz and Nicole laying there side by side. I could tell straight away that they were both dead. My first reactions was I wanted to pick Liz up and hold her, but straight away what came into my mind was police, photographs, fingerprints, etc., etc. I didn't think I should move her, although as much as I wanted to.
Then I went and got some blankets and some things and started to try and help people. But a lot of people were so incredibly past any help that I sort of gave up. And the police were great, but it took such a long time for people to respond, the ambulances and the choppers and everything.
Well, of course, Port Arthur is isolated. That's why they built the penitentiary here. Any convict sentenced to Van Diemen's Land knew that in all probability he would never return. And even today, the place remains isolated. Mobile phones don't work here, and the road to Hobart is long, narrow and winding. So when Martin Bryant started to blaze away, he would have nearly 2 hours before armed police and medical teams from Hobart could arrive.
Yes, I arrived via helicopter and we landed on the oval next to the Broad Arrow Cafe.
Peter Stride is an experienced paramedic, but no experience could prepare him for what he saw
when he walked into the Broad Arrow Cafe.
And I just stood there and I thought, shit, this can't be true. And it seemed like an eternity that I just stood there and stared. And then I thought, oh, I better get into this. So then I started to get around to people and speak to people that were actually being looked after.
And it wasn't just carnage at the Broad Arrow. There was more just along here where the buses were parked, and then up this road to the toll booth where Aileen Kingston was the attendant on duty.
I saw him pull up and had a gun, and I saw Nanette fall to the ground. And I decided that at that stage that if I wanted to live, I had to do something about keeping out of sight.
Bryant drove up to the toll booth and commandeered another car, shooting dead its 4 occupants. Aileen had locked herself in the toll booth toilet, expecting to be Bryant's next victim.
I was oblivious really to what was going on outside. I think I heard the gun continually going, and I didn't have a clue what was going on, but I was too scared to go and look. And I just waited for the door to open. I was quite sure he would come through that door after me because it didn't take any getting through the door. It was a little tiny latch, and I thought he would come after me. All I can remember doing is praying, and I'm not religious, but I prayed, and all I could think of was I didn't want to die.
I was in the kitchen at the cafe, and Colleen came bursting through the servery door and said that there was somebody shooting out there.
Bridget Cook was supervisor of the Broad Arrow Cafe. She ran out through the back door and tried to warn visitors to keep away, only to be confronted herself by Bryant.
Somebody said that, there he is. And I looked around the end, which is really stupid, but there he was, pointing a gun at me and shot me.
I'd said goodbye to Nanette and the girls early that morning. I'd set out on playing a round of golf, which I didn't very often do on a Sunday.
Walter Micak ran the local pharmacy and was sponsoring the golf tournament that day. He remembers hearing noise from Port Arthur across the bay, but it wasn't until later that the word came through about a gunman.
And the first thing I did was ring home and not have an answer there, and straight away I must admit I had bad karma.
Walter Micak's loss came to symbolise the Port Arthur tragedy. The nation, indeed the world, shared his agony as he left the memorial service in Hobart.
The feeling I got when I actually stood on those steps and looked down was just this incredible feeling of deja vu to my wedding day. And, and just the thought that Nanette actually wasn't by my side, just, I suppose, made it a fairly excruciating thought at the time.
And I'm pleased that Mitchell was only 13 months old because he had no understanding whatsoever of that, blood is your life force. He just obviously missed the fact that his dad wasn't around, because it's the only word he could say at that time too, was dada, which I tried to change in that first week pretty quickly because that just totally destroyed me often. When he'd run to the door and say, Dada, at the door, because we had a lot of people dropping flowers off and things. So that was very difficult.
The community was hugely disrupted. It's a small, isolated community with many family networks intertwining in a very complex way. And when you have an event like that in such a community, it's like letting off an explosion in a confined space.
Dr. Ian Sale is a forensic psychiatrist. He examined Martin Bryant. He can tell us about the workings of a criminal mind and, just as importantly, about the state of mind of the victims.
After a disaster, you might expect to get something like 20 to 30% of people who will develop post-traumatic stress disorder. Probably a third of those who develop this condition, they're going to have lifelong problems. They're going to be isolated, they're going to be irritable, they're going to be anxious. Some of them may run into problems with alcohol.
I feel like I'm spinning around the outside of this whirlpool and the whirlpool's trying to suck me in, but I'm absolutely determined to just spin around the top for as long as I can instead of being sucked down that hole, because I didn't know how long it would take me to get out, and I didn't want to be I wasn't going to be another victim of Martin Bryant. I wanted to do the best thing that I could for my family, my friends, and for Jason. He would definitely want me to be happy, and life is very short, and you never know when you're going to not be here, so I think it's important to be strong and positive and do the best I can.
And I just stood in the hallway and said to my wife, I haven't cried yet, and I did, for 3 or 4 minutes. And that was a relief for me. I probably held it back too long, and then after that I was right.
I've always been a person that loved life, and to suddenly not love life, it's very hard to cope with, and you don't know why. You get out of bed and you vomit and you've got to go back to bed because you can't cope, and you just got to get up and make yourself go. But I find that's why coming back to work helped, because I had to get out and I had to do it, and I had to come back and I had to smile nicely and get on with work, and that's what's helped me get through.
I don't think we'll ever know why Martin Bryant did it, but perhaps one answer lies on this farm. Psychiatrist Ian Sale has a theory about Bryant's motives. It involves his desire to own this property in the hills above Port Arthur, just a few kilometres from the Seascape guest house where the bloody massacre began.
The motive probably lies in his relationship with the Martin family, the owners of the Seascape guest house. The Martins also held another property at Palmer's Lookout south of Port Arthur. The Bryant family had wished to purchase this property, that the Martins had refused to sell it to them. I believe that Bryant probably saw his father's eventual suicide, his unhappiness and his suicide, as being in some way linked to the failure to get that property, and thus he blamed the Martins for what had occurred.
I can remember Martin coming into a shop at Port Arthur on a number of occasions and asking me personally, why won't you sell it? Why won't you sell it to us? And I always said, because it's too special to us.
Glenn Martin's parents were Bryant's first victims. Today, in the ruins of the Seascape guest house in which they were killed, Glenn finds it hard to believe that anything so casual could have cost the lives of so many.
I mean, lots of people come and ask you to buy something, but a lot of them don't come back again. Once you told them no, but, I mean...
You didn't read anything?
No. Quite harmless, really.
Martin Bryant's a very abnormal person. He is intellectually disabled to a degree. He also has a very unusual pattern of expressing his emotions. He generally giggles and snickers, whatever the circumstances. I found that when I interviewed him in the prison, and I guessed that he may well misbehave when he was in the court, and warned the Port Arthur recovery team that they should pass it around, that whatever Bryant did in court, they must not take it personally. It was nonetheless incredibly distressing to see that behaviour.
The judge could sit there and frown at him. He couldn't have cared about that. His barrister turned and gave him a couple of sharp looks. Well, that straightened him up for 2 or 3 minutes, and then the laughing and the jumping around and the giggling started again, as though it was all one great big joke.
He's nothing. He's just this... He has no presence. He's inadequate, pathetic human being. Not pathetic, not human, really, I don't think.
I believe, on the practical side, I'm a practical person, that he shouldn't be around. We shouldn't have to pay our money to keep a person like that. I believe that he shouldn't be here. And while he is here, I always have a fear that he may get out. And I just would rather he wasn't around.
After the event, guns became the issue. But guns have always been just part of life here in rural Tasmania. Everyone had one, including some of Martin Bryant's victims.
It was the week before the massacre at Port Arthur, a little over a week, that my wife was actually using an automatic weapon herself. And this was a target shooting. Guns have been in the family, her family, for as long as she knows and as long as I know, and don't believe that because of what happened we should all throw our guns on the tip.
I would like to see the individual responsible for giving Bryant those weapons to share Bryant's cell, and they can debate between themselves who is the more morally culpable for what happened.
It's in the nature of human beings to try to find meaning, even in the most appalling circumstances. But there really is no meaning in what happened here. A senseless act of carnage committed by a deranged individual. But while we can't find meaning, what we can find is a nobility of the human spirit. That in the face of what happened here, people could still show grace and courage. And in the end of it all, in the absence of meaning, perhaps that at least is one consolation.
And now that I know that it's not going to go away, and I think I'll learn to manage and cope, and I've determined not to let him ruin my life, as he has a lot of others.
The future is totally in front of me. I'm not going to be destroyed by this. I won't let it ruin my life. And you know, I've got great friends and great support, and I'm really quite okay by myself. I miss him desperately, and I'd love him back, but I will survive.
Hello, I'm Dimity Clancey. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.